And welcome to another edition of the Big Nick Energy Podcast. We have a huge one for you today, guys. Obviously, when you're going to hear this, Knicks Miami is going to start in less than 24 hours from the time of recording. And because of that, I actually got a member of the enemy lines, the host of the Heat versus the World podcast, Joel Jacob, living in Miami. He's literally in New York. He's in New York Light, by the way. We're going to take over that stadium, as he already knows. Joel, how are you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing good. Thank y'all for having me on the show. Oh my gosh, my bad, you guys. I'm
And now
sorry.
we all got to wake up just like
Yeah.
to cover Jimmy Butler.
Yeah. I mean, listen. So I'm happy to be here. Let's go. This is one of my first times being on a pod where I'm in enemy lines. So this is definitely an interesting experience for me. If y'all want to hear what we got to say about the Heat for whatever reason, Knicks fans, check us out on Heat versus the World. We've been doing this for well over 2 years, and yeah, let's get right to it.
No, you actually said that before we get right into it. You said you started over 2 years ago. We literally started this in February of 2021, partly because of COVID and then partly because of timing. Did you start in like February, March of 21?
I started back in like December 2020. So definitely like around y'all started
You beat
because
us by 2 months.
because it was because the thing with the pandemic was that you're at your house, there was nothing to do, and the Heat had just made it to the finals and everything. And if there was any time to really talk about the Heat, it was definitely that time
Yep.
because there was nothing going on. And the pandemic was really tough for everyone, especially for me. So it allowed me to like get rid of all that negative energy by just channeling it into something that I love. And that's the Miami Heat, which is why I take great pride into the podcast and making it something that I could really put a lot of energy into when I don't when I have the time and I don't got anything going on at the moment. So.
I respect that, man. Let's both keep building, and hopefully, we'll see you in the Eastern Conference semis or championship game for years to come when we keep doing this.
Yes, sir.
But Joel, let's get right into it, man. So we'll actually start with because anyone that's listening to this, any Knicks fans that listen to me, they already know what happened, and I know a lot of us watched Miami, Milwaukee, and pretty amazed by it. And I know you're gonna say a lot of things, and I like listen to your podcast, and it's gonna be like a lot of Giannis and Brooke Lopez couldn't stop us with their drop coverage. Why is Mitchell Robinson gonna do anything? Mostly because his coach is way better. Can you can you really get into just like how like insane it was to watch an opposing team that by all accounts, playoff Jimmy aside, has the one of the three best players in the world, although playoff Jimmy might be Michael Jordan. We really don't know still. Can you talk about what it was like to cheer against the team that like literally had a 5-year-old coaching them?
It was crazy because you know what? I was just so nervous going into this series because I think a lot of Heat fans out there were when we were in the play-in, they were kind of nervous because okay, like we win the play-in, but then what happens next? Do
Dude, the
we get
Hawks waxed you.
yeah, and then we play Chicago. So like when we're playing Atlanta, we're like, okay, we're gonna see the real Miami Heat in this game. And then that happened. So a lot of Heat fans were scared going into this Bulls game because it's like, okay, let's say we beat Chicago. What happens next? Like are we just gonna be put out of our misery by the Bucks? And that was the thing that kind of bugged a lot of people. A lot of people was like, let's go for the lottery pick and move from there. And that was where a lot of discourse happened on Heat Twitter about whether they should do it or should they not. And it was a whole messy thing. But, overall, like to see what happened when the actual series started, because I knew I was gonna watch. Like I'm a big believer in my team no matter what. Like the
Even if you
Heat
think
could
you're gonna
go
get swept, you're gonna watch the game regardless. You're in the playoffs.
yeah. Yeah, like we could be 0-82 the whole regular season. I'm still tuning in. If we some way somehow made it to the playoffs, like they were magically to put us in there, I'm still gonna watch. And that's essentially what happened in this scenario. And I was just amazed. And you look at the situations, us missing Tyler Hero with the broken no, it was I don't want to say broken hand, but specifically two broken fingers. Victor Oladipo also got hurt, unfortunately, which
Feel
sucked
so
because
bad for that dude.
yeah, because we all know that man's story. Like that was the one thing that made my heart sink to my stomach. So there was that, and Well, and people mention Giannis's injury, and I'll say this: obviously that happens, but you know what? At the end of the day, he still played some of his best basketball before his injury, and we were still waxing them. Like if you look back specifically at that game one, and then he came back in game three, or yeah, he
Game 4.
Game four, yeah. So game four, he comes back, has a triple double and everything. Playoff Jimmy comes in and drops 56, and it still didn't matter.
Yeah.
So you go into game five, Giannis is still cooking, and we saw what happened. And one thing I will say is this, and that's why I will give Knicks the advantage because of what you mentioned, the fact that you guys have a coach that will call a timeout when it is needed. You guys have a coach that will not use a challenge in the first 5 minutes of an elimination game. Like you guys actually have a coach that will make adjustments when needed. And no hate to Coach Bud. I know he's been dealing with a lot, so prayers up to him, but that was insane. Like I could not believe it.
Dude, I went off on a rant. We'll get off the Coach Bud thing after this, but I went off on a rant on Twitter, literally Twitter Spaces 2 days ago, and I literally was saying that he must have Tim Donaghy on speed dial and that he probably has a giant yacht waiting for him in one of the Great Lakes. Because like it seemed like he blew the game.
Yeah.
It literally seemed like it was like the most like 1990 Chicago Black Sox scenario I've ever seen in my whole life. There's 0.5 of a second left. You're down 2. You just gave up the game-winning basket, and you don't call or the game-tying basket to go to overtime. You don't call timeout. Then you're down 2, 10 seconds left in overtime. You have both of your overtime timeouts. You call neither one to advance the ball or call a play. It literally seemed like this dude just wanted to stop playing anymore. And I
Literally,
truly think that Tim Donaghy might be in his cell phone.
Grayson Allen took the final shot for the Bucks season, and he didn't
I
even
don't
get
think he
it
even
off.
got it off, man. I think if the clock expired.
Nah, it was. I'm still amazed by what happened because I'm just sitting there watching the game and I'm like, Grayson Allen has the ball. There's 2 seconds left. Like, what the heck is going on here? And then you see, I don't know if you guys saw, there was the whole quote from Spo where Max Struess was on the Dan Le Batard show, and he mentioned that even Spo was going crazy over the fact that
He literally was like, I don't know why he didn't call timeout.
right.
Oh my god. Yeah, I'm happy for you guys. Personally, I mean, you can ask any Knick fan. We would rather see you for obvious reasons. Like the Bucks to most people. I'm sure you even thought this prior going in the series. Like you thought you were going to be gentlemen swept. Realistically, 5 or 6 was probably the max. The Bucks were the championship title favorites going into the playoffs. It was them and the Suns and the Celtics, one way or another. And then out of nowhere, Giannis gets hurt. Their coach literally coaches like it's his first year coaching like little kids AAU basketball for some reason. And then the game's over. And then they're out. And it's just the most mind-boggling thing. So let's get into Knicks-Heat because this is really what everyone's here for. This is what I'm here for. You're here for. I made Vin fall asleep already. I can already tell. But let's go. So going to this, the Knicks were 3-1 against Miami on the season. Every game was after February 1st, so everything was relatively recently. The first game was without both Josh Hart and Kevin Love being on their rosters, but for the most part, these teams missing a player here and there look like what they're going to look like. You did have Tyler Hero for all 4 games, so it's going to suck, obviously. The Knicks going in are a -158 favorite. Miami's +134, which implies like a 60-40% more or less for both of them. So what are you, just first and foremost, let's get it out of the way. The casual fans, and not even casual, because Jimmy Butler literally is like 90% of your team right now. But the viewing audience that doesn't watch the Heat, and even a lot of it that doesn't watch the Knicks, this is going to be a lot of Butler v. Brunson. So just tell me exactly how much Butler has done for your team and what you're looking for him out of this series specifically.
I mean, y'all saw it like game 4, game 5. I mean, I'm just expecting Jimmy to be Jimmy. And I think for me, the expectation will be the same for him. And I know, and listen, like shout outs to the dogs that are on the Knicks, because I know a lot of people mention guys like Josh Hart and Quentin Grimes and all them. And like, I haven't seen all their footage, but I've seen some of the games against the Heat, and they're dogs for sure. The only thing I will say though is that like I just expect Jimmy to be Jimmy, man. Like even when he's going up against, whoever. And I know like, I look back in the last years going up against a guy like Giannis, who was defensive player of the year at one point, Brooke Lopez, a defensive player of the year finalist, and then Drew Holiday, one of the best point of attack defenders in the league, and a guy that players voted anonymously as the best defender in the whole NBA. And obviously, you can put a little bit of a thing there that they were coached by Budenholzer, but look, even that like aside, I just simply feel that Jimmy is just that guy. And for me personally, as a Heat fan, obviously I want this team to succeed. But when it comes to Jimmy Butler, I want him to show the world why he's number one, because I look at everything he's been through, like all of the slander he gets, and he doesn't care about it because at the end of the day, he knows what he is as a player, and he will go out and show it on a daily basis. But for me, still being that fan, like I call myself a Jimmy Butler apologist. So whenever I get a chance to
What is
see
there
that,
even to apologize for? He's like a top 10 player in the playoffs. Who the hell cares?
yeah, so it's like I just want to go out there and see that man just do what he can, and to do it at the Garden would be a great scenario. And obviously, it's not going to be easy because he's, like I said before, he's going up against a coach that will take care of the situation, that will try to make adjustments and stuff when things aren't going right and everything. So it's not going to be like the Bucks series. But at the same time, I expect Jimmy to rise up and still find a way to show people why he is that guy, and why, even though he might not admit it, why playoff Jimmy is just unstoppable. And and it's not a knock against like guys like a Josh Hart or a Quentin Grimes. It's just me trying to run with the agenda that I don't think there's anyone really that can stop Jimmy Butler. So
I respect that. We're gonna find out one way or another because unlike Bud, I want to get into actually one thing real quick about Drew Holiday. This poor man was stuck on an island for literally the last 3 games, just chasing Jimmy Butler around as Kevin Love is screening him and picking his pocket a little bit. Bam is screening him and kind of shoulder checking him. We got Caleb Martin throwing hips. We got Max Strus screening and then flying out for threes. And literally Drew Holiday is just like, we're not going to switch a single screen. No one's going to like help me out. We're just going to I'm like 5 feet behind him right now because I just ran through 8 7-footers. Like, no one's going to help me. And Bud's like, nah, you got this, man. Bro, he's like 33 years old. This isn't 27-year-old Drew Holiday. And
right.
By the way, I lost money on the Bucks. I just want to say I had the Bucks to win the title, and that's why even without this being the next matchup for the Knicks, I watched the series more than any of the other ones, and that's why I'm so mad at their coach. Absolutely insane. So to get into the Knicks and Tom Thibodeau part, you did mention Josh Hart. Do you actually know? So I wrote this down. I'm assuming it took me a while to figure out this info, so I'm not expecting you to know this. Do you know? So number one that covered Jimmy the most this year, literally just covered him the most in the most games, was Mikal Bridges. Number 2 and 3 are both on the Knicks. Do you know who they both are?
So I know one was Josh Hart for sure, because I have this one pesky Knicks fan that's like a big Bam Adebayo apologist himself. So like he'll sometimes show up on my TL and be like, oh, Heat fans, you better watch out. So he'll get on my nerves with it a bit. And then, he mentioned that it was in fact Josh Hart. So I knew that. Number 3, is it Quentin Grimes or?
You're gonna be amazed when I tell you. Okay. It's Julius Randle. Because prior to Kevin Love really getting minutes on your team, you had Butler at the 4. Right. So literally it was like 6'8", 250 Julius Randle against 6'6", 235, 230 Jimmy Butler. And right. Josh Hart did in fact cover Butler better than anyone else this year. This was going around on Twitter yesterday. I think IQ for 3 posted it. He was 6 for 22, only shot 27% on Josh Hart. Drew 5 fouls and made 9 free throws out of it, so he got some of it back. But 6 for 22 ain't nothing. And then Julius Randle covered him the same exact amount of minutes, just a few seconds less. 7 for 16, only 43%. And that included him actually making threes on Randle. He didn't make threes on most people throughout most of the season. Did get 9 assists by dishing off from Julius Randle, though, because when Randle actually tries, he's a tenacious defender. It's a matter of him blocking in and trying, as all of us Knicks fans know. It's like, hey, Julius Randle scored 50 points today, but once he got to 30, he stopped playing defense. Hey, Julius Randle only got 10 today. He didn't play defense because he was sad. So that's like the battle we constantly have with what is now our second best player.
Right.
I think that Josh Hart, I think that Jimmy Butler, much like we kind of went into and saw with Donovan Mitchell in the first round for the Knicks, we're willing. I almost feel like Tibbs is willing to let him score 35. If you score 35 and you stop the rest of the team, because it's basically Butler, Bam inside, which we're going to get into Bam and Mitch next.
Yeah.
But it's Butler, Bam inside, and then shooters around the outside. And if we're constantly sending Brunson as like, I'm assuming you guys are going to screen to get Brunson on Butler a lot for obvious reasons. He's our worst, smaller defender that he'll be able to take advantage of. But if we're trapping that guy and that's 4-on-3, you're relying on Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, Caleb Martin, Gabe Vincent to make threes. And if there is a real effect for MSG to have, it's in the playoffs when the Knicks are good. I'm sure. Have you been to New York at all in the past like 5-10 years?
Really when I was pretty young, and that was like well over 10 years ago. So I haven't been to a Knicks game or anything like that. All I can say is I have seen videos inside the Garden, and I know it is kind of a crazy place.
And what happens is that like 4 to 7, 8 years ago, you said you would watch the Heat if they were 0 for 82 and still made the playoffs. The Knicks basically were 0 for 82. They were going like 17 and 65. And it's like, how am I watching this team with Lou Edmondson and Ron Baker on it? It was really bad. It was really, really dark times. But then people are like, oh my God, there's so many like other teams' fans there. They're all tourists, blah, blah, blah. It's like the Knicks were winning 20 games a year. Of course, there were all other fans there. Like, they're still charging $140 a ticket because it's the Mecca. Like, they're still like, I'm not paying $140 to watch a team that won 12 games. I can watch Ron Baker for free. I'm pretty sure if I go to my local park. Like, I'm not gonna pay for that. But now it's like they're in the playoffs. Like MSG, the atmosphere of the Mecca is real. Like the decibel level they had was louder or almost as loud as when the Seattle Seahawks were their loudest when Marshawn Lynch made that run like 12, 13 years ago, the beast mode run. That's the decibels inside MSG when they either one bang a clutch 3 late in the fourth or 2 when they're screaming defense late in the fourth. And while I do have a lot of faith in Jimmy Butler to be able to handle that, I think Butler can handle literally anything, as do you. I don't have faith in Gabe Vincent, Duncan Robinson, Caleb Martin, and them to actually make the 3 off a double team.
Right. And I agree, and I see why you feel that way. For me personally, and I don't want to go too deep into it because one thing specifically that I was thinking about saying is going to be something I'm going to tie into my X Factor specifically. But I will say this one thing with the Heat is that I do feel like one thing that will benefit us playing in the Garden, while it is a new experience for them, because most of our guys have never played New York or played in Madison Square Garden for a playoff series. What I like is the fact that I do know our guys have been battle tested. Like we've had guys step up in the past in like the most, what's what I'm looking for, hostile, I know how they call it, like the hostile crowds and everything. Because
Yeah.
I especially look at that for guys like Strus and Max Strus and everyone, because last year we had the series against Boston, and TD Garden can be a bit of a ruckus. It might not be like Madison Square Garden, but like if you look at what goes on, like from what I've seen from my TV, like they're no joke. Like they'll
Boston
go.
fans suck. I'm gonna tell you. Maybe it's not only because they're my rival. They fucking suck. I don't even swear on this podcast, and that's how serious I am. I'm sure I made Vin just laugh right there, even though he's on mute still.
Like, yeah, but I know it was Max Strus, like he was hitting clutch shots and everything, and I think moments like that where you're just battle tested and everything and going up against tough crowds like that prepare you for situations like being in the Mecca, place where the fans will go crazy and they will scream at the top of their lungs and everything. So you make a great point, but at the same time I also believe that being in those situations, and Milwaukee can also get pretty loud here and there. So I think being in those situations where you're in other hostile crowds, you're playing against them, I think that can also play a big impact for our guys. And once they've been exposed to it and once they've been able to succeed in it, that will be able to get them ready for what they might have ahead of them once they enter Madison Square Garden for game 1 and 2.
There is a chance. I mean, I know you guys also have like Kyle Lowry, Kevin Love. Like there are guys that have definitely seen and heard everything. But
Right.
there's a chance that like the Strus, Martin, um, Duncan Robinson trifecta you have coming off the bench and getting minutes, and Gabe Vincent, even though he's a starter, they're going to be in the Garden the first time, and there's a chance at least two of the four do what Darius Garland did in Game 3, which is crap his pants. Literally started out 0 for 9 and just could not handle the situation around him. But that's the thing, we're not going to find out till we watch the game tomorrow. Like
Right.
we can talk about hypothetical Garden factor until we're blue in the face. It's not something you see until you see it.
Right.
I do want to get into Bam and Mitch for
Mhm.
obvious reasons, because outside of Jimmy Butler and Jalen Brunson both trying to score 30 and 40 respectively to get their teams to where they need to, I think the winner of these games are going to score like 105 points. I know you guys were just in a high scoring matchup. That I highly doubt that we're going to see a bunch of buck 20s in this series. I don't know if you feel the same way. These defenses are pretty tenacious.
Mhm.
But so for Bam and Mitch, I wrote down the four scores that Bam had this year against the Knicks. And this goes in order of the first game to the last game. And the first game was no Mitchell Robinson. So we were playing Hartenstein and Sims. And Sims, I mean, he just got shoulder surgery. He's out anyway. But while he's great as a third center right now, he's just not ready for this moment. Bam
Right.
in the first game had 32 points. No Mitch. Bam in the second game had 18. Bam in the third game had 15. And Bam in the fourth game only had 9. And that had a lot to do with Mitchell Robinson and Isaiah Hartenstein. I'm going to bring up the same point to you that I did when I was talking to a Cavs fan when I had Carter Rodriguez on for a couple weeks ago for that preview. Jared Allen was only 6'9", 7-foot wingspan, and 230. Bam's a little bigger weight wise, but he's another one, 6'9", 255, but a 7'1" wingspan still. Mitchell Robinson is 7 foot, 240, 7'4" wingspan. Isaiah Hartenstein, 7 foot, 250, 7'2" wingspan. And we've seen, I know you watch Bam all year. I know Bam, like, when he's used well, he's bringing the ball up the court sometimes in the third. He's trying to give Jimmy and the point guards a break. He tries to shoot a little farther out, 18-footers, try to get the center out of drop coverage, try to get him like away from the paint kind of thing. But Bam has struggled against dudes that are good at defense and taller than him. And I've watched enough Heat games. I know you've seen that. What are you expecting Bam to be able to put up like 22 and 10 kind of Bam, or what are you looking for out of Bam against Mitch and Ihart in this series?
So for me personally, I have high expectations for him because you know what, I was personally concerned too, and I know a lot of Heat fans were because there was a point really where after the All-Star break, it seemed like we didn't see the same Bam that deserved that All-Star spot in the first place. And it kind of caused the whole discourse on social media where it's like, what happened to the Bam, before that All-Star break took place? And it kind of frustrated people, and it especially did during the series against Milwaukee because he didn't have some easy situations in a couple of the games that we saw in there. Well, however, what I do gotta say, like Game 5, that closing game, like that was by far the game that really pleased me the most as someone that roots for Bam almost as much as I root for Jimmy because I look at the way how Bam performed and one thing that they were mentioning a lot through the Heat's local media was that Bam was suffering with like a legit hamstring injury and everything. And despite this, and despite the fact he didn't have that same leap or that same type of athleticism that he has when he's healthy, and he was struggling a bit, but he was still able to pick it up in that second half. And he came up big for Miami. I forgot his official stat line for Game 5, but
I have it
even
up. He had a triple double. He had 20, 10, and 10.
right. So even though he was in foul trouble too, like I know he had 4 fouls at one point, late in the game, he was still taking the time to go out there and guard Giannis, and he was putting him in tough situations where he either passed the ball or he went for the mid range and bricked it. So to me, that was impressive to see because even with the hamstring injury, even with the foul trouble, because some players when they see that they have 4 fouls and stuff, that causes them to hold back a bit because they're not trying to get that fifth foul and eventually get sent out the game. So for Bam to even know all this and to have that injury and still, put one of the best players in the game right now, in that tough situation, despite all of the adversity that he faced at that moment. To me, that was impressive, and I think that was a great way to really get him going, for the remainder of this playoffs. Because, like you mentioned, going up against a guy like Mitchell Robinson and Isaiah Hartenstein, and then even above that, like hypothetically speaking, I don't really like doing hypotheticals because I feel like I jinxed the team a bit, but in a small hypothetical, if we were to face like the Celtics, because I don't know what's gonna happen with Philly. I know Embiid is doubtful for Game 1. I look at Boston and it's Robert Williams and all their guys, and I know a lot of people was giving him hell for that matchup last year. I personally believe that what we saw from him in Game 5 is a great way to really get him going for the remainder of the playoffs, which is why my expectations for him is at an all-time high as well heading into this next series.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, I'm not. I don't want to lie to you at all. Obviously, I think of Bam right now as a Knicks fan the same way we thought of Domantas Sabonis when he was in Indiana, and I'm pretty sure a lot of Knicks fans are with me on this. I've never seen Bam actually play a good game against New York anyway. I mean, he had the 132-point game, but against our starters, literally in his 2, 3 years that I've seen him play consistently, it's like always like 16-6, and he's like averaging 21-9. Like I've just never seen him really do well against Mitchell Robinson, and then even way back when it was like Mitch and Nerlens Noel. Like I have yet to see it happen. And like everyone's always was like, when Domantas was still on the Pacers, Domantas Sabonis is better than Julius Randle. Sabonis is like basically Nikola Jokic light. He's like a great passer. He's super strong, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, why is it every time I watch this dude against our team, though, he gets bullied the crap out of by this guy 4 inches shorter than him that's allegedly worse? Like,
Right.
why is Randall putting up 35 and Sabonis has 18 and 10? Like, I just don't see the connect there. And I mean, we're about to play Miami 4-7 times. So for your sake, and honestly, for the sake of this lasting a little while, I hope Bam actually plays well, because I have yet to truly see it against New York.
I feel you, and it's like, and that's the thing, because I know a lot of fans for the Heat, they still get worried about him here and there, and that's where a lot of the discourse comes from. But like I said, to see him do what he did specifically in Game 5, hopefully that does light a fire under him. And personally, and you said it yourself, and I'll say it again. I just simply hope he plays well, because obviously with Tyler Hero out and without Victor Oladipo as well, like we need all hands on deck if we're gonna try to make an improbable run as an 8 seed. So
100%. While you mentioned that, actually, I do just real quick sidetrack, because I wrote this before, so I wanted to mention it. As we've all heard and seen, there have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's been 5 now, 6 times that an 8th seed has beat a 1 seed in the NBA playoffs. One time was the Knicks beating the Heat, as we're all very well aware from seeing the videos over and over again.
yeah,
I'm not bringing that up to actually bring up the fact that, oh my God, the Knicks beat the Heat, let's go FU. It's like, I'm saying that because it was the lockout shortened season, and the Knicks went 27-23 and were the 8th seed, because they only played 50 games, and they got Sprewell with like 18 games left. So like that just wouldn't happen. Like the Knicks realistically were like the 5 or 6 seed and kind of screwed Miami over with how good they were and where they lined up. But for the four things that were actually full season 8-1, the Nuggets beat the Sonics in 94. They lost the next round. The Warriors beat the Mavericks in 2007. They lost the next round. The Grizzlies beat the Spurs in 2011, also lost the next round. And the 76ers beat the Derrick Rose Bulls when he tore his ACL, lost the next round. So for every single time that an 8 seeds beat a 1 seed in a full season scenario, much like we see in the NCAA tournament when a 15 beats a 2 and they always lose the next game because they're still an inferior team going up against a better team. They just were good that day. They were good that week. You guys definitely have history going strongly against you. I know they keep showing the stat that like, oh my God, it's the 6th time it's happened. They never show the part that they always lose the next time. Just throwing it out there.
Right. And like for me personally, it all goes back to Jimmy Butler. And I just can't help but stress it. Like my dog really went out there and he had 56-42 against the Bucks. And you know what? Screw the Budenholzer effect, screw all that.
There is an effect though.
I mean, well, let's just ignore it for the one time. Let's just ignore it. So, that all aside, I just feel like he's just gonna be that guy to bowl out. And, I just don't think that, I look back in those other teams, I don't think they've really had a guy like playoff Jimmy where once he goes off, you look at him and he's like one of the best players in the world. So for me, I think just simply having a guy like Jimmy Butler, you always have a chance. And I feel like now I'm just saying too much about Jimmy specifically on this pod, but like when you see the way how the series went and how it was basically Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat, like you can't even blame me at this point because it's like that's basically how it's been right now in this first round series. And I wouldn't be surprised if it went like that way with this next series. Hopefully, other guys step up and they do a big series performance as well. But Jimmy Butler, man, like that's really the main guy where I think everybody's just looking at and wondering what's he gonna do next.
I have a if Jimmy Butler ends up missing any time in like a Giannis misses 2.5 game scenario, do you like what do you think the Heat losing like 5 or 6 days? He's more or less your whole chance and opportunity. Am I right?
I mean, as a strong believer in God, I
I'm
believe
knocking on
that.
wood. I don't want it to happen, by the way.
Yeah, oh yeah, I know. Hold up, I'm here with.
Yeah, there we
Right, we good. I'm gonna say this. I'm a strong believer in God, so you know what? There is power in His name to make miracles happen. So I, like I said, hopefully that never happens. But if it was for some reason, and like I said, God forbid it. God be with them always. Um, but I'm gonna I'm gonna count on the other guys. So hopefully God works through Bam and works through the Gabe Vincents and the Max Struces and all them. And
I got the right guy in here, man. Your homerism is strong. I love this. I love this. What is the overall consensus of Miami fans going into this series after pulling off the upset against the Bucks and going against Jimmy Butler? Does basically everyone expect you guys to win, even though you are the clear underdogs going in again?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is because there is the whole Heat and Knicks rivalry. So it's like I feel like, and I don't know if you guys as Knicks fans feel the same way, but I think it's like I feel like a lot of them would be pissed having to have their season end to the Knicks because it's like we had this crazy run in this first round series. So it's like now we're going against someone that's been a big rival for us for years now. You're going back to the '90s with it, and it's like, do we really want to have this run we're on, just have the plug pulled out against a team like the Knicks? And I think that's the main thing, like for Heat fans everywhere. And I think it's just that, and then also the fact that I think people are just hyped up with the fact that we're even in this situation because a lot of people is just ready for the lights to be turned out in that Bucks series. But seeing what Jimmy did and see us beat Milwaukee the way how we did, like not even 7 or 6 games, I think that just revived the whole Heat fan base altogether because there were so many like soulless people. Like I'm in all these Heat group chats and in all of these areas on Twitter, and I'll see the way how they feel, and they were just ready for the series to be over with, and now there's just been this breath of fresh air. They feel excited and everything. So, and like I said before, they don't want to have their series be ended by the Knicks of all teams because of the rivalry, it would put a much more sour taste in their mouths compared to if it was any other team in the league. So, well, maybe if it was a team like Boston or Philly, because I mean, we kind of on the same boat
Yeah.
with you guys, where it's like, but yeah. So because of the rivalry and everything, I think they really would not want to lose this type of series. So that's in my opinion, that's how I really look at like the whole consensus of Heat fans as we get ready for this series.
That's fair. And honestly, I mean, once you beat the 1 seed, it's like, why would you feel like you'd lose to anyone at that point? You guys should, in essence, I guess, have confidence up until if you would play the Suns in the finals again. I don't even, but outside, like you guys are underdogs. I mean, it's clear, like FanDuel, DraftKings, they all listed, obviously. You are
Yeah.
a very, very, very top heavy team. We've talked about Jimmy Butler 70% of the podcast, literally for that reason that it's so top heavy. Joel, I want to do a quick exercise with you
Mhm.
just to actually show maybe. I mean, you might honestly still pull the Heat are better than the Knicks in a lot of places thing, but I don't know if you can do that. I'm going to go through player by player for all 9 guys that they both plan on playing and tell me
All
which one you think is better.
right.
We'll start with the most obvious one. Jimmy Butler, RJ Barrett.
Jimmy Butler,
Okay. Bam Adebayo, Mitchell Robinson.
Bam Adebayo.
And now from here, I expect you to hopefully say a lot of Knicks, unless you are the biggest homer I'll know. Julius Randle, Kevin Love.
Julius Randle,
Jalen Brunson, Gabe Vincent.
Jalen Brunson.
Max Strus, Josh Hart.
No, because Josh Hart does have defense and everything. That's tough because I really rock with Max, but I might
I mean,
have to
he's a great shooter, but that's more or less.
I might have to give that edge to him, Josh Hart.
So the Knicks are up 3-2 right now. And once we get to the bench, outside of Kyle Lowry, maybe it's not looking good for you either. Kyle Lowry, Emmanuel quickly.
That's tough because, Manuel quickly, I mean, that was literally a six-man of the year candidate this season. I don't know, but at the same time, like Kyle's played really good coming off of the bench and stuff, but I don't know, for looking at it from this season specifically, so any Heat fans that listen to this, don't torch me for it. But if I gotta look at it from this season standpoint, because Kyle was struggling a bit, I'm gonna go with Emmanuel quickly because he did have a better season than Kyle so far.
Word up. I'm saying literally they're going into the game tomorrow. I'm worried about tomorrow. Obviously, Kyle Lowry's had a better career,
Yeah,
obviously, but we're playing tomorrow. So we're
yeah,
talking about tomorrow.
yeah.
Where was I? All right. Caleb Martin, Quentin Grimes.
I gotta say Caleb Martin, man. I feel like he's built for that moment. Like, the way how he stepped up for the Heat, because there was a time where he was our starting power forward at like 6'5", and for him to step up the way how he did and then continue to cook once we got a guy like Kevin Love to be our new four and for him to come back to the bench, like it's great. And nothing against Quentin Grimes, but from what I've seen from Caleb, like I've just been impressed with everything.
Grimes averages more points and rebounds and plays the best perimeter defense on our team. Just throwing it out there. But I mean, you did get to at least a third Heat, so it's not 2 versus 6 at least. You're at least going to do 5 or 3. Cody Zeller, Isaiah Hartenstein.
You see, that's tough because I've never really seen too much of Isaiah Hartenstein, so don't judge me.
You could do unknown. You could literally just be like, I'm not familiar with this game.
All right, so I'll just throw that up there, especially because I haven't seen too much of Cody Zeller because he didn't play like for this whole season, and then we just signed him as a pickup after the trade deadline. So
That's fair. I mean, yeah, you've only had him for he's probably played what, like 20 games, and he averages like 6 minutes a game. Like, you're not going to get that big of a feel for the
yeah,
guy. I'm going to tell you the answer is Isaiah Hartenstein, because there's been arguments throughout the year whether who's better between him and Mitch at various times, because his offense and his passing has given us a
right,
lot. And while Zeller literally only is going to get 10 minutes a game, ideally, because you want Bam out there as much as possible, there are
right,
games where we're playing them 28-20, 24-24 almost. That's how close and like good they are impact wise.
right.
I do love. Vin was actually talking about this before, that if you wanted to have, if you were a girl and you wanted to have a kid in the NBA, just find a Zeller or a Plumlee, because no matter what, they'll make the NBA even though they won't play. Which I thought was hilarious. And then the last dude, which again probably will go next, Obi Toppin, Duncan Robinson.
Hmm. I don't know, because Duncan Robinson was really stepping up in that series, so it's like I
He
can't
rode
go.
your bench until a month ago.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. Oh my gosh. Do I want to be a homer and say Duncan? I don't know. You know what? Screw it. I'm gonna say Duncan just for the one time. Just to be a bit of a homer and also because I gotta give him some love because I've been hating on him for like the whole year. And the fact that he's been getting 90 million just sit on the bench. So Duncan, I'm gonna ride with you. So I'm gonna be a bit of a homer and say Duncan.
That is fair. That is fair. I mean, you did actually get to four people somehow. You actually made it. You actually did mention more Heat than Knicks because you don't know a Hartenstein's game enough.
Yeah.
Joel, you're going to be in for a rude awakening, man. There's a lot of history that's going against you between all the eights losing the second round. There's like the whole our team, like even if you have 2 of the top 4, the next 6 guys are all Knicks kind of thing. It's gonna be I try really, really hard to be unbiased going into these. I'm naturally pessimist. I literally thought in the Cavs series, like I chose Knicks in 7, partly because I actually thought the Cavs might win. And I didn't want to be seen or heard saying that I rooted against my team just for the sake of a
Right.
take standpoint. I literally going through notes and numbers and watching everything and just knowing that the Knicks beat the Heat over and over again this year, even though the Heat are seen as clutch and the Knicks are seen as anti-clutch because of Julius Randle, even though he made a game-winning shot, as you're very well aware on you guys. I literally can't see a world where the Knicks lose this series unless both Brunson and Randall just were knocked out of the series. Knock on wood, that's not going to happen. But like literally outside of us having catastrophic injuries, I cannot see a way this goes beyond 6 games. I feel like you're going to predict the Miami Heat, but I'm picking Knicks in 6. And honestly, it might be 5. How many games is Jimmy Butler single handedly going to win for you guys?
I'm gonna be real with you. Like I'm exactly the same way opposite. I'm thinking Heat in 6 or 5. I'm just that big of a Jimmy Butler guy. I just simply feel that he's built for these types of moments, and I also think it helps that we do have the better coach in Spo. So I think the playoffs is where he does his best work and everything. And it's not a knock against Thibs, but at the same time, I look at what Spo was able to come up with and how he was able to run circles around Coach Bud. And obviously, the gap between Bud and Thibs is noticeably there. But for me personally, I look at our squad and, me, I'm just going to believe in them. And I think at the very most, the battle will go to 6 games. And it's gonna be tough. I feel like it's not gonna be like the Bucks games where a couple of the games we won were by blowout. I think they're all going to be clutch games, and it's going to be both teams going back and forth, and it's just going to be a really fun series altogether.
Hey, Joel, I got a question for you, bro. This is Vin, by the way. So what is like the consensus? Because you're probably more in touch with Miami Twitter world, and as we are in touch with the Knicks Twitter world, what is like the consensus over on your guys' side about like I know you may have your bias, but like the majority, what are they saying? And are there any players that you guys are not familiar with on the Knicks team?
So for regarding Heat Twitter, I mean like the consensus, because like everyone's on a high right now. So the way how I look at it, I think a lot of people are feeling good, but at the same time they also have their small fears because at the same time I don't think any of them want to look at any team in a negative light because there have been so many times throughout the regular season where we feel good about the squad. Maybe they get a really good win that we didn't think they'd even get in the first place, and then it just completely falls apart 3 games later. So I think they're worried that some Heat fans are worried that there could be a bit of a trolling that the Heat does, but mostly overall, when I look at the consensus of Heat Twitter, I think everyone is just excited and to do this against New York, the team that I guess they've had, well, the rivalry, and then also I guess Heat fans and Knicks fans have had beef on Twitter as well. I think they're just ready to see a good series and finally, decide, who the better team is and, who really does own this rivalry. So overall, I don't see anything negative from there regarding like fears and stuff, but regarding players that they're not familiar of, I mean, I know, like I mentioned, Josh Hart. Like I know a lot of Heat fans have come out and mentioned how, oh, Josh Hart, he's not gonna hold his own against Jimmy, and if Brooke Lopez, Drew Holiday, and Giannis weren't able to maintain him, they don't think that Josh Hart can. And for me personally, I just simply don't think he can contain him either because, like I said, I think Jimmy Butler is that guy, so I don't think anyone can contain him. So that's where a lot of people stand with that. I don't think much people are familiar with Josh Hart's game because that's been the one name that's really been thrown out more, probably more than Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle at this point. Because I think everyone knows about those two guys specifically. You have Jalen Brunson, who's had an amazing year, and Julius Randle, who made the All-Star team this season. But when you look at Josh Hart, I think that's the one guy people are especially throwing out there because of the fact that he's going to take on the important role in guarding Jimmy. And people are mentioning like this could be the guy that could put a stop to playoff Jimmy. And now Heat fans look at it and they're like, you know what? We don't think so. And like I said, I'm on that same boat too, but it will be a fun matchup to see Jimmy Butler versus Josh Hart.
It really is going to be like interesting for fans and stuff to watch because we're going to see a lot of like double teams. We're going to see a lot of trapping. We're going to see a lot of different guys being thrown at Jimmy Butler. And the whole Josh Hart is a Jimmy Butler stopper is it's a very like we're playing one-on-one basketball kind of ideology. And I just don't think we're going to run into that a lot. And I truly think going back to the Budenholzer thing, the fact that you guys were able to watch Drew Holiday chase Jimmy Butler for 80% of the series, even though he's getting screened constantly, makes it seem like after watching that fiasco of a game in a series that other coaches would do the same thing. If anything, I'm assuming Tibbs and other people would be like, well, we're definitely not doing that. And I think we're going to end up seeing a lot is the Knicks are going to switch a lot around the perimeter along those like off ball screens because between Hart, RJ, IQ, and Grimes, they're basically all four more or less interchangeable with who they cover and what they do. So I do think a lot of times we're watching Hart getting double screened by both Bam and Love. We're going to see IQ or RJ actually pick up the slack instead of like, oh, Josh didn't make it and Jimmy got to the rack. Like, who would have known that he didn't make it through these 250-pound guys? I would have never saw that coming. Mike Budenholzer, you owe me money. But Joel, thank you so much, man. I greatly appreciate you guys coming on. It is a great surprise that the Heat obviously made it through Milwaukee, but from a rivalry standpoint, from it being a better, more fun series overall. And I think the NBA just liking that the two larger markets versus Cleveland and Milwaukee making it. It's great for the sport. It's great for us. And I know it's great for you as a Jimmy Butler fan. So tell everyone where to find you, give a quick sign off, and we'll get on out of here.
All right. So first off, like I said before, thank you guys so much for bringing me on to the show. And also y'all can follow me on Twitter at JoelKJacob_. And if y'all want to check out our pod content, we're available everywhere at HVTW Podcast. And we're available, and you can follow us on all the social media platforms as well. Thank you.
If you forget the letters, it stands for Heat versus the World. So if you Google Heat versus the World, you'll also find them everywhere because that's how I found them originally.
Thank you.
And again, for everyone to find us, like, share, subscribe on YouTube, Apple Pods, Spotify, and Podbean. Follow us on YouTube again, Facebook. Join our Facebook group. Follow us on Twitter, Big Knick Energy _ Big Knick Energy on Instagram, Big Knick Energy 1 on TikTok. We're posting more and more videos now that we have more free time. And Joel, I'm sorry to end it this way, but let's go Knicks. Peace.
P5.